Cool, it's great to be here. I've flown up from Melbourne, so I'm a little bit sleepless myself and highly caffeinated, so I think it's a running theme
I flew in from Ireland.
She's winning. So what I want to do today, guys, is I guess tell you a little bit about what I do in my journey to date, and then I also want to just try and skill you up a little bit with some of the tools that we've used that have been really successful for us in doing what we do. But I think to kind of kick things off, I actually want to take things a bit downbeat and talk about a very serious issue. And I think this is hopefully something that all of you have been thinking about a lot, especially over the last few weeks. What I'd like to start with is to have you all thinking about how together we can go about changing the world using beer and toilet paper. Now, this is what I do for a day job. I work with beer and toilet paper every single day of my life, and it's a lot of fun, but it's obviously very different to what most people do. So let me tell you a little bit about how I've ended up here. Now, it actually wasn't too long ago that I was where you are at university, sitting on the other side of the table, and I moved from Perth to Melbourne, where I studied engineering and economics at the University of Melbourne. As an economist, it didn't take me too long to realize that it was going to be much more cost-effective for me to spend all of my holidays in Southeast Asia than it was to go back to Western Australia, because the flights cost about the same, but obviously the cost of living was so much lower. So almost by accident, I spent 3 or 4 months of every single year living, traveling, and doing development work in different parts of the developing world. And like I guess every student does, towards the end of my degree, I started saying, well, what am I going to do for a career? Where's this all leading to? I knew that I loved problem solving, I loved innovation, and I loved working with markets. So I set my sights on working for a consulting firm called McKinsey & Company. I worked very hard towards getting this dream job offer, essentially. And after about 2 years of chasing this, I finally got the contract, the piece of paper on the table in front of me that said, come and work for us, come and work for McKinsey. And for me, this was a huge life goal that I'd finally been able to achieve and to tick off. And I realized that I've been working so hard towards this for a couple of years that I could now, for the first time, stop and actually think about everything that my life had meant to date, as opposed to just where my life was going in the future. And I realized that, yes, I love problem solving, I love innovation, and I love working with markets. But I don't just want to solve business problems, I actually want to solve social problems. And that's what this incredibly strong pull to the developing world had always been. So I made a very tough call, and I turned down this dream job offer and instead moved to South Africa, where I worked on the ground with a development aid organization. As soon as I got there, I knew that I'd made, although it was a tough call, the right call. I was immersed in an environment that I loved, and I was working to solve a problem that I was truly passionate about. So for me, it was definitely the right decision. However, after about 3 months, I realized that I was way overqualified for what I was doing, and I was also really limited in the number of people that I could impact on a day-to-day basis. So once again, I'd found something that actually wasn't quite right. I started thinking about what I wanted to do, where to go to next. And at this point, I realized that I'd seen so much of the poverty that I'm sure you've heard about, and some of you might have seen yourselves as well. The 780 million people without access to clean water, the 759 million illiterate adults, and the 2.4 billion people without access to a toilet. But like you guys, these numbers had been thrown around in front of me so many times that kind of actually lost their meaning. What did have meaning for me was when I realized that I'd been in and out of the developing world every year for about a decade by that point. But I hadn't visually observed any changes in the level of poverty that I was seeing. And that didn't seem to make sense to me, because we hear about organizations that are working to solve these huge problems. They're doing great things. But you would have thought that if that was happening at a rapid pace, then you'd actually be able to visually observe the change occurring over a 10-year period, and I just couldn't. So I guess, once again, the economist in me came out, and I said, well, let's have a look at the numbers. What's actually going on in terms of statistics? And I looked at that 759 million illiterate adults figure, and I found that over the same decade, we've been able to improve adult literacy by about 100 million people, which is huge, right? Like, this is 4 to 5 times the population of Australia that can now read, write, sign their name for the first time in their entire life. So this is a massive achievement. But if you think about this, if you extrapolate this out and we improve at this same rate moving forward, it implies that we're actually not going to achieve global literacy until about 2085. And doing the same analysis on sanitation, we're not going to achieve global access to clean toilets and everyone being able to wash their hands until about 2080. Now, there's actually not going to be many people at all in this room that will be alive to see either of those two things happen, which for me says we have got a massive problem and we're literally just not able to solve these fast enough at the rate that we're going at the moment. Now, it turns out that fortunately, there are solutions to these problems. We know that solutions exist. There's lots of organizations that are doing great work to solve these problems. WaterAid, for example, tells us that for every $1 invested in sanitation, we see a $4 increase in economic productivity because now people are more productive because they're getting sick less, they're living longer, and we've also got higher school attendance rates. So there's a lot of organizations that have got solutions to these problems, but when you go out and talk to them and say, how come you can't do more? What's holding you back? Why can't we solve these issues more quickly? The number one response is always the same. It's a lack of capital. They don't have enough money. They need more capital in order to achieve more impact. And so I started saying, well, where's this capital coming from? Why can't we get more of it? And it turns out that it's not from governments or corporations or foundations, which is what I thought initially. The majority of their funding actually comes from individuals. It's people like you and me and our mums and dads and our uncles and our families and our friends. That's where the majority of funding for these organizations comes from. So if we go and have a look at what that means for us on an individual level and why we can't achieve more, it actually turns out that the average Australian donates about 0.36% of their income on an annual basis. So if we're trying to solve these problems more quickly, it means that we need to increase this number somehow. We need to change this from being 0.36% of our income to something perhaps more like 5% or even 10% of our income that we're donating every single year. Now that's a big increase. We're talking about a 15 to 30 times increase on how much we're all able to give as the average Australian every single year of our lives. I don't think we can just ask people to give 15 times more or put 15 times more people out there at traffic lights rattling tins and taking donations. If we're going to make this happen and solve these problems more quickly, I think we actually need to go about changing the way that society engages in philanthropy. And this sounds like a crazy idea. Let's just go and change the entire philanthropy market. But fortunately, I think there's actually a pretty straightforward solution. It's beer and toilet paper, okay? Now, if you're good students, you're probably all thinking the same thing. You cannot arithmetically add beer with toilet paper. And you're 100% correct. I guess what I'm saying here is that we need to work with products that we all buy every single day because we want them, like beer, or need them, like toilet paper, and use the profits from our everyday purchases to turn us from being just consumers into philanthropists. This is what I call consumer-driven philanthropy. And I think if this is going to work, if this crazy idea is something that's possible, then there's kind of a rule book that we need to play by. First of all, I think that we can't sell a low-quality product. Secondly, I think that we can't charge an excessive price premium. And thirdly, our marketing has to move away from this age-old tactic of using guilt to motivate sales. This is something that we can't do anymore. To test this idea out and to see if this is something that can work, I spent the last probably, 5 years or so working on the concept for a non-profit bar called Shebeen. And the idea behind Shebeen is that we sell different beers and wines from the developing world, with the proceeds from each sale going back to an organization in that drink's country of origin. So we're donating 100% of the profits that we're generating and giving them back to projects in each drink's country of origin. So if you come in and have, say, an Ethiopian beer, you're helping to provide agricultural equipment to a farmer in Ethiopia. And a glass of our South African wine is helping to provide local language books to school kids in KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. Now, the name itself actually comes from the Shebeens of South Africa, which are these speakeasies that sprung up during the apartheid era. They're kind of like, the speakeasies of the Prohibition era in the United States, but in South Africa instead. But our Shebeen is a bit different in that it's, first of all, really positive for our customers who can now make a difference by thinking about where they go for a drink. And it's also really great for our beneficiary partners who are tapping into a previously inaccessible pool of funds. So instead of just relying on regular donations, they're now able to gain access to the trillions of dollars that are changing hands in the economy every day. And importantly, this is a new audience for them because your regular bargoer isn't someone who's supporting an Ethiopian farmer on a regular basis. So I guess when we had the idea for Shebeen, we had to say to ourselves, this seems like a great concept. It seems like something that could work, but is it worth us spending probably a lot of money in the next 5 years of our life kind of taking this to be a reality? So what we did was we tested the concept out by selling Ethiopian beer in a cocktail bar in Melbourne called Madame Brussels. And we saw that this was consistently one of their top 5 selling items. So we then, seeing that that was a really positive response to our first product, we then opened a temporary Shebeen venue in the basement of a CBD building for 4 days, where we traded with our full supply of Shebeen stock. So we had all of our different beers, all of our different wines, and we're doing cocktails as well. And over that 4-day period, we had about 1,500 people through our doors, which was really positive. But most importantly, we saw that we overshot the revenue projections of our permanent Shebeen venue by about 100%. So it looked like we were potentially going to be twice as successful and make twice as many sales as what we were projecting. Off the back of that, we then were able to raise the capital and secure the lease to open the permanent Shebeen venue, which is now the only non-profit bar in the world, in Manchester Lane in Melbourne. We've been open now for just over 2 years, and we've seen consistently our revenue increasing and our profit that we can donate increasing over that time, which is really positive. So things are looking really good, which brings me to our model, our financial model. So the idea here is that we're a regular business, and like a regular business, we generate profit by making sales or earning revenue, and then taking away our expenses from that. And all of our expenses are the same as everyone else. So we've still got our staff costs or our wages, our rent, and all of our supplies that we have to look after. The difference is all of that profit gets donated. So if everything's running smoothly and we're hitting our projections, it means that we should be able to be donating around about $200,000 each year that the venue's operating. Now, I'm not here to talk to you about just beer. That would be crazy, right? I'm here to talk to you about beer and toilet paper. So for us, toilet paper really started to become a part of this equation when we said to ourselves, Shebeen has changed from being this crazy idea that we had to something that's now going to be a reality. How can we take what's really good about Shebeen and improve on that and make it even better? What are some of the things about Shebeen which aren't perfect? What holds it back? What stops it from being more successful? And we realized that not everyone drinks beer, and you obviously can't fit everyone inside a bricks and mortar venue that's about the size of this room. So if we wanted to achieve more and create more impact, we had to find a product that touches everyone, which is exactly what toilet paper does, right? So we had this idea to start an environmentally friendly toilet paper company that uses half of its profits to build toilets in the developing world. And obviously the product was going to be called Who Gives a Crap? Now, again, we thought this is a great idea, but is this something that can actually work? Is this something that we can turn into a reality and hopefully a huge success to create a lot of impact, or is it just a harebrained scheme? Now, it turns out starting a toilet paper company is not actually that straightforward. Your minimum production run is about 50,000 rolls, which creates a number of problems. First of all, it costs about $50,000 to produce that much toilet paper. But on top of that, if something goes wrong and you can't sell that toilet paper, you end up getting stuck with enough toilet paper to fill this entire room. So we had to think a little bit differently about how we could go about testing this concept and taking it to market and turning it into a reality. So I'm going to show you a video that basically outlines the crowdfunding campaign that we ran behind this to help us pre-sell the first $50,000 of product in July 2012.
Hi, I'm Simon Griffiths, co-founder of Who Gives a Crap. We reckon every trip to the bathroom should be a feel-good experience. So we've spent the last 2 years developing the only toilet paper that delivers one every time. Who gives a crap? It's a breakthrough on so many levels. Let me take you through them. It's better for the environment, and we've cut the nasties, so it's better for your body. That feels good. But unlike other recycled toilet paper, we're all about comfort. So it has a beautiful fluffy texture and low PTR, or poke-through rate. That feels good. You can choose to buy it off the shelf or have it home delivered. Either way, it costs the same as other brands, but comes with 1,200% more puns. That feels good. But here's where we're really on a roll. 50% of our profits go to sanitation projects in the developing world. You see, while a trip to the bathroom can be the ultimate feel-good experience for some, for many, It's not, because 2.4 billion people don't have access to a proper toilet. The bad stuff ends up in waterways, causing diseases that fill half the hospital beds in the developing world. That doesn't feel very good. And that's why we're donating 50% of our profits to WaterAid. WaterAid help the world's poorest people access clean water, sanitation, and hygiene education. They're literally saving the world from the bottom up. It's as simple as that. We take something that everybody needs and use the proceeds to help people in need. And that feels really good. Heading up Who Gives a Crap are Jehan Ratnatunga in LA, Danny Alexander in New York, and myself down in Melbourne, Australia. We're engineers and product designers who in 2010, through a shared passion for humanitarian aid and toilet humour, developed a business model that grabbed a lot of headlines and won a bunch of awards for entrepreneurship. We're busting to press go on the first production run and create Who Gives a Crap's first edition. Our feel-good toilet paper needs a feel-good price. And for that, we have to order in bulk. But we need $50,000 to make that happen. Basically, we need toilet paper. And like anyone who's waiting for toilet paper, we need someone to help us out. We're asking for your support. We need $50,000 to fill our warehouse with the first bulk order of Who Gives a Crap. And I won't be leaving this toilet until we've raised enough for our first order. I'm sitting down for what I believe in, and I'm not getting up until I've got some toilet paper. $50,000 worth. Till then, you can jump on our website and see me sitting right here on our live feed. So please, bit of help.
So this is what our campaign looks like. If you jumped on our site, you could see me literally sitting on a toilet on a live web feed. This is 2.5 hours in. So everyone at this point is still quite fresh, thinking that everything is going to run very well. This wasn't very painful at this point. It obviously got a lot worse from here. Now, fortunately, the campaign got picked up by national television and print coverage in Australia, national print in the US, and for some reason we were crazy popular in Brazil and Greece. We still haven't figured out why. But basically what happened is once that kind of thread was sown, this went crazy on social media. We ended up being able to generate about $1 million of equivalent PR value and had 2.5 million social media hits. And we hit that $50,000 target in 50 incredibly painful, long, sore, horrible hours. And at this point, we realized that we were on a roll. We'd figured out how to create something that was digitally shareable, how to get someone to want to tell someone else about what we were doing. And we wanted to carry that digital phenomenon through to our physical product. So we realized that initially we wouldn't be selling toilet paper in supermarkets, we'd just be selling online, which gave us the ability to think about our product a little bit differently. So we decided to package every roll individually in quite a fun, well-designed wrapper. We put 3 red emergency rolls in the bottom of every box, so you'd know when you're about to run out. And then we also set up a subscription service, so you could sign up and get a regular toilet paper delivery and never ever run out of toilet paper again. Now, it took us about 6 months in order to get everything in line to do that first production run and start shipping product out to our supporters. And once we did start sending it out, something really quite interesting happened that we hadn't predicted. Our customers or our supporters started posting pictures of their toilet paper on social media with their dogs, their babies, all sorts of different crazy stuff. And without us doing any marketing or advertising, our sales were doubling day on day, which we just weren't expecting or prepared for. So after 5 days, we sold out of our entire stock of product, which we thought was going to last us about 3 months. So it took us another 3 months to catch up, and in that period we realized that first of all we had a toilet paper company that was much more serious than what we had initially expected, but we also made our first donation to WaterAid, and we looked at everything that we'd sold to date and realized that every single roll was able to provide someone with access to a toilet for about a week, which was a pretty awesome outcome. So that's, I guess at this point you're probably saying to yourself, okay, I get it, beer and toilet paper, it's all starting to make a bit more sense. But what I really want to have you all thinking about is what you can take away from this. What I've talked about is really relevant to you and how you can use that today and moving forward. So that's really what this next section's all about. Now, what I want to talk about is basically how we go about creating something new, and this idea of entrepreneurship is essentially just being a well-managed experiment. So whenever we're innovating or creating something new, we're just experimenting in a structure that allows us to ensure that what we're doing is going to be more likely to be successful. The methodology that we follow is quite common. It's called Lean, and it was made really popular by this guy called Eric Ries, who wrote this book, The Lean Startup. So if you're interested in this stuff, this is really the Bible, and it's worth reading if you're wanting to create anything new, regardless of what it is. Now, what I've done today is I've actually kind of lied to you guys, and I've told you the classic lie that people tell you when they're talking about something that's been successful. What I've done is I've said, we had this idea, we developed it, we launched it, and look, it was a huge success. Now, this is actually not what happens. It's just how people like to tell stories. The reality is that pretty much anytime anyone is trying to develop something new, they don't follow this three-step process. Instead, they have an idea, they develop it, yep, the first two are right. At this point, they fear launching it because they feel it's not ready for the market yet. They're worried about what people will think. They therefore end up spending a whole bunch more time and more money getting it to a point where they're satisfied putting it into the marketplace or showing it to other people. And what happens is they're now launching incredibly late, over budget, and find out that once they do launch it, it fails. It's a dismal failure. It doesn't achieve anything that they were expecting. Now, this is actually what happens. This is the truth, right? What I told you before is really a bit of a lie. This is the truth. This is what you would commonly expect to see when someone's trying to innovate or create something new. Now, this is because 90% of the time, ideas, new concepts, new developments are going to fail. This is the statistic, and it's the truth, right? So you're kind of taught at university to think that failure is really bad. And in reality, failure is actually very positive when you're trying to create something new because it shows you what you didn't get right. It allows you to think about what did work and what didn't work, and therefore takes you a step closer to being successful the next time that you work through this same product or concept or idea. So we have to stop thinking of these failures as being bad and instead think about them as learning opportunities because they're teaching us what we can do, what we need to change in order to make what we're doing more likely to be successful. Now, if we're thinking about these failures as being learning opportunities, all these questions that are classically asked about something once it's gone through to a launch, like was it on time, was it on budget, was it high enough quality, was it well enough designed, these questions actually aren't relevant because they're just a waste of time if all we're going to do is end up failing anyway. What we need to do is strip out all of these unnecessary bits and pieces that take time and take money and just get to that point of failure or that learning opportunity as quickly as possible. So if we come back to that innovation cycle that I looked at previously, if we're trying to just reach that point of failing as quickly and cheaply as possible so that we can then learn and move on and get closer to being successful, we actually need to strip out all of these middle steps and instead have an idea, now go about developing just a prototype, the simplest possible version of our idea or our concept that tests the core assumptions that are necessary in order for us to be successful. We'll then launch that into the market too early, so when it's 80% ready. You never want to launch something when it's 100% ready because that last 20% actually takes 80% of your time and money. So launch it too early, and then we're going to fail, but we're going to fail very quickly and very cheaply, which is great because that failure point allows us to learn what did work, what didn't work, adjust what we're doing, and start this cycle again. Because we're never going to do this just once. We're going to keep on churning through this cycle with each step taking us closer to getting it right until eventually we've got something that is working and is successful. But even then, you're probably still going to keep working through this to improve it moving forward. So this is the lean approach, essentially. And this is what we did with Shebeen, where we started selling our product in Madame Brussels to test whether people would actually buy an Ethiopian beer over, say, an Italian or a Belgian or some other beer that was quite well known to them. Seeing that was successful, we then went and opened our our temporary pop-up venue and then used that to help us bankroll and open the permanent venue. With Who Gives a Crap, we did the same approach. So this crowdfunding campaign was a huge test for us. we actually launched simultaneously in Australia and the US and used the campaign to tell us which of these two markets was going to be better for us to focus on in the long term. And what we found was that we actually had twice as many visitors from Australia, but 3 times as many sales in Australia compared to the US. So not only did we, for some reason, have more virality or a greater capability to reach new customers in Australia, we also had a higher conversion rate or a greater possibility of making a sale to each of those customers as well. And as a result, we've kind of pulled out of the US market now, and we're just focusing on the Australian market, where we've got a lot of traction and things are going really well. And then we can look to go back international once we refine what we're doing and work out what the right levers to pull with our customers really are. So that's how I think we can all use beer and toilet paper to save the world. And to that I say, bottoms up. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Do you want to do?
Yeah, well, seeing as Simon's here and seeing as you're there and you've got brains that probably have questions, does anybody have a burning question? Come on, you have to have some. Okay. Here, who's got a mic? Ooh, I do. Okay. What is your?
Thank you. My question is that it's about the business, right? So what did you do with the other half of the revenue that you make?
For Who Gives a Crap?
Yeah.
Yeah, so both of these businesses, they're actually kind of iterations on this model of testing what happens if we're non-profit versus for-profit and different splits of profit donations and so on. So Who Gives a Crap's kind of the third iteration. There's another company that started all of this, which I didn't really talk about as well. So what happens with the other half of the profits is, at the moment, they all get reinvested back into the company. So as business owners, we don't actually see any of them, and we're not going to for quite a while. But if we're really successful, then at some point it means that there will be, some profits that end up being left over. And the idea is that that's important for us as business owners because, one, it now changes the stakes. It means that we're financially invested in the decisions that we're making because they will impact us personally if we're successful in the future. And two, if we are successful in the future, it means that we would then have this pool of capital that we can use to go and start something new, to create a new idea or a new concept and therefore more impact, which is really what we're all about. We're not really that interested in doing stuff just for the profits. And to be honest, when you've got new ideas, the hardest thing is finding the initial capital to get that started. Once it is started and it's working, it's easy to find money. So we kind of want to build up that pool so that we've got the capability to do new things in the future as well.
Great. There's another question here.
Hey, just wondering, so is your roadmap to diversify into other products outside of toilet paper once it starts taking off? And what are your competitors doing in this space, like Thank You Water and stuff like that?
We don't really think of Thank You as a competitor, I guess, more as a collaborator. And you've probably seen their product expansion into supermarkets, and they're continuing down that pathway. We've done a bit in the retail space. We're primarily online, so we do mostly, the largest kind of amount of our sales happen through our website, through subscriptions and direct sales to customers and businesses. And we're really interested in that space because we think online is really the future of what consumption looks like. So yes, we're definitely kind of thinking about all of the different channels that we can play into, retail versus online, and we're trialing 6-packs in IGAs across Victoria at the moment to see what that retail space looks like. But at the same time, we're looking at new products that we'll be rolling out later this year and new geographies. So we've got a model that makes it very easy for us to plug into additional countries, whereas when you're working just with major supermarkets, that can be something that's more tricky because it comes down to the relationship that you have with the supermarket. Yeah.
Cool. More questions over here? Oh, yeah.
Did you face a lot of stigma behind sort of like, oh, just another charity-driven product, just like Thank You Water? Like, was there a lot of people just being really skeptical about how profitable it was going to be, or if it was actually going to do anything for these developing countries?
We've actually had the opposite experience. So we still haven't spent any money on marketing or advertising, and our sales have grown 10% month on month since launch, so tripling every year, essentially. And that's all come from our customers telling other people about what we're doing. So physically taking a roll and giving it to their friends and family, or sending them an email or posting on social media. And we've been kind of amazed by the support that we've had through our customer base, which has been really fantastic. So yeah, I think the other side of that is that what we did with our product is the additional value that we create for our customers who were just buying regular toilet paper before isn't just that we're donating a portion of our profits. We've created a service offering and a product offering which is quite unique. So it's something that people like to display in their bathroom, which traditionally they haven't done with toilet paper because it's well packaged and designed. And the fact that they don't have to lug 48 rolls of toilet paper home from the supermarket, which especially if you're living in the inner city can be a real pain in the butt, sorry for the pun. But it means that now they can get that home delivered, which kind of, reduces the friction and makes it easier for them to purchase. And then with subscriptions, the idea that we can predict their usage frequency and tell them when they're about to run out of toilet paper and then ship them new boxes before it happens means that we've got, quite a different kind of product offering, I guess, to what a traditional toilet paper company has.
Awesome. One more over here.
Just had a question based on the initial grab, because the beer kind of company started with the Ethiopian beer that you launched in the bar. How do you suppose, what factors made that Ethiopian beer so successful? Were you guys competitive in terms of price, or was it the sticker or something on it, or the pamphlet, or why did you guys get that initial sort of positive grab?
Yeah, we think we kind of didn't do too much delving into our customer base, which was a mistake at that early stage. It's something that we should have done. We should have been interviewing people and finding out why they'd chosen to buy that beer. But what we found was that people were interested in consuming something that was quite exotic. So they, were seeing more traditional options available, but were interested in trying something that was quite unique and that they couldn't necessarily get somewhere else. And then we also did put a byline under that product that said that where the profits were going and what that looked like. So it kind of changed that purchasing decision from just being about a pure, product to then also having something else added onto the side of it. Price point was the same, yeah. So we were competitive, or sitting kind of in the middle of a price bracket that was relevant for that product, yeah. And we think that's really important. It's if you're trying to sell something at a higher price point that's doing all of the socially beneficial stuff, that's when you get stigma saying, well, hey, why would I buy this product when I can buy a cheaper product and make a donation for the same amount? Although no one would ever actually end up making that donation, but that's a common argument. So for us, we've always been focused on creating something that is comparative in price to what's already in the marketplace, so that we can, kind of, I guess, squash out that stigma.
Awesome. Well, you already got a question, dude. Did you? No,
I didn't get a question.
Okay. Oh, it was you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hey, Simon, I've got a quick question. I just really want to learn more about the challenges that you faced, a bit of story about it, what was the hardest challenge you had to deal with, and how did you overcome it? Because I think, just like what you said, it's very important.
Great question.
There's so many challenges. Which you want to talk about this week, last week, the last year. Yeah, I mean, we are literally constantly screwing stuff up, and that's fine. That's what we encourage to happen in both companies, because it helps us to get closer to that point where we know that things are going to work in the future. I mean, some of the big ones, there's a really kind of stupid one that we did with toilet paper, which was my fault. And on our very first production run, we ended up producing 200,000 rolls of toilet paper, because we thought that initially no one would buy toilet paper online. We thought it was going to be really tricky. So we also produced a product that was specifically for businesses so that we could go out and directly sell to companies. So we ended up producing way more than what we'd kind of planned for in that first production run. And when the product landed in Australia, everyone started using the product, and we realized that we had made a huge mistake in the production run because we had never produced toilet paper before. And we'd missed out a very small part of the production run, which is where you check that the perforations through every sheet of toilet paper are really working properly. And so we produced 200,000 rolls of toilet paper with really bad quality perforations, which meant that when you tried to tear sheets off, it created tears through the paper, and it just was a really nasty, horrible product to use. And so we basically, luckily, sold out of all of that product in Australia very quickly, which was great. And then once we realized that this problem was there, all of the product had gone. So we had to go back out to our supporters and say, oh my God, we are so sorry. We've made a huge mistake. We're going to correct that. Bear with us. The next time you order from this problem is not going to be there. We're aware of it. We're happy to kind of work with you on this. And fortunately, a lot of our supporters kind of came along for that journey and believed in what we were doing, and then did reorder and continue telling people about where we were at, which helped us to continue growing moving forward. So that was a huge mistake, and it was my fault because, one, I didn't do the quality control properly, and two, we bit off too much. We thought that we'd got something right, and we wanted to be able to kind of ride that success and help us to get to a bigger size more quickly than what we perhaps should have been doing, instead of taking that lean approach of doing things very small, incremental, one step at a time, and taking a little bit longer to make sure that we were getting it right.
Awesome. Well, can everyone join me in saying thank you very much to Simon? Awesome.